Hey, what's up, guys? How you guys doing? Give me 1 second here while I fix everything on the content side. Make sure this video is monetized. All right. Fix the design makeup. Turn the volume down on the music a little bit. All right. Let's go through this. Let's go through the chat real quick. Coog, hey buddies. Buck B, wow, must have been a pro guy. Aki, what's up, Coog? What's up, man? Fellows, Cardboard, what's up, dude? Did Miami end up getting swept? No, Coog. Miami actually came back, played really well on Sunday. But guys, we got a special guest today. One of our advisors at Elite Sports Advising, my younger brother, Jordan Wren, will be coming on. We'll be talking a lot of college baseball from the past weekend, but we'll also be talking a little bit about his career, about the Sun Belt, and everything like that. So without further ado, bring him on here. What's up, Jordan?
What's up, man? What's up, chat?
Yeah, so let's go through what everyone is saying so far. All right, Buck says, I feel like some things got sorted out this weekend, and we'll see some big changes in the rankings this week. LSU, Tennessee, UNC on top, drops by A&M and others. Yeah, and I think we'll go over the top 25 and the changes and just what's transpired in those rankings. But I think you're pretty much right on a lot of those moves. Buck, no Miami pulled out Sunday. To their credit, they were down 4-0 early, but didn't fold and won big. So pulled out 1 of 3, but clear UF is in a different class. Yeah, and I think we'll talk about it in a little bit later. Once Canes isn't in here yet, but we'll talk about it. And Zach either. Looks like Aggies are out of the top 10. Oh, good. Glad they got the Sunday game. Buckby checking out D1 baseball now. I think there are still real questions about Arkansas offense, but pitching looks strong. Georgia's 13-1, but there was a lot of close calls, including that walk-off yesterday against Gulf Coast. Dusty, good afternoon, gentlemen. Dusty in the chat. All right, so first things first, let's talk about the Miami series. So Jordan, obviously, University of Florida takes the first 2 games, but they're close. They're not like blowouts. And obviously, Game 3 yesterday, Miami – big lead, gets out to a big lead and ends up winning, I think, 13-7 or 14-7. So my take on that, and then I want to get yours, is Canes finally in the chat. Good afternoon. What a war on Saturday. Yeah. Inside info right there. So my take on Miami right now is, listen, Florida is in a different class. University of Florida, I think, like Dusty said, on a Canes on a Miami Hurricanes space Saturday night, is there's no team that's been to Omaha in the last 10 years more than University of Florida. So for Miami to play Florida that close Friday, Saturday, and then to have a big win Sunday, that tells me they're getting coached up. The coaching staff is doing a good job because they don't have the talent that Florida does, but they're playing game to game with them. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, definitely. You got a red-hot Florida team. You come in, they take 2 or 3 from Miami, obviously, but you've got a little bit of breathing room here this next couple of weeks. You got FIU coming up, Villanova, and then you got a weekend series against Connecticut. I think you do a little bit of work on the things that might not have been firing on all cylinders throughout this series with Florida. You take those, you build upon those, and then you move into the weekend series with Connecticut.
Yeah. And again, Miami is like one of the few ACC teams. There are a couple that don't go right into ACC play this weekend. We're going to go over top 25, all that stuff here soon. But I just think, again, if you're a Miami fan, what you were looking for is that, like, you didn't get swept. None of the games are really a blowout except for really Sunday when Miami won by 7 or 8 runs. And so, like, what I said in the space as well is that you're on the road in a hostile environment. Home field advantage is massive in college baseball. Like home field advantage is way bigger than, again, like in the Major League Baseball or anything like that. Home field advantage in college baseball is big, especially in a rivalry game when, fans are going crazy. And Florida's also was also like a pretty large favorite in that series. So to come out of there on a road series in hostile environment at probably a superior team, 1-2 with a couple other close games that you could have won, like one swing away. That's a win if you're Miami. I mean, that's exactly what you wanted to see. You wanted to see that we're not, this team isn't going to just blow us out two out of 3 games or blow us out all 3 games. Coog says Karsten is fitting well with the Cougs. Yep. Canes, my dad was dying on the floor, Dusty. He's met Po-Man before. Afternoon. FIU at Marlins Park tomorrow. They felt like blowouts, though. And again, Canes, like, it doesn't matter if they feel like a blowout. The question is, are they blowouts? And like Saturday night, I mean, you're down 2-0 late in the game. Offensively, you want to see something a little bit better. But again, the Gators, they got serious arms. And so I think it was a great series for Miami. So let's go over the top 25, Jordan. One of the things you wanted to talk about, let me make sure I zoom in on this just so everyone can read it. But one of the things you wanted to talk about, we'll talk about the movement and stuff, but in the top 25 now, guys, are 3 Sun Belt teams. So Jordan, talk about, obviously you played in the Sun Belt, you played at Georgia Southern. Right now, you got Southern Miss, Coastal Carolina, and Troy, all at kind of the bottom 5th of the top 25. Like, talk about just how competitive, not only when you played, but how much more competitive it's gotten in the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, definitely, man. One thing, when I played at Georgia Southern, obviously when I got there, one of the newer members of the Sun Belt, when I was there, was just the 2nd and 3rd year that we were in the Sun Belt, but year over year, really competitive programs. The ones that come to mind, obviously, back then when I was playing at Georgia Southern, Troy was very competitive. Southern Miss wasn't in the conference yet. Coastal Carolina had just moved into the Sun Belt after a national championship in the Big South. Louisiana Lafayette was consistently a top 25 team.
Yep.
In South Alabama, haven't been as great as they were back then as of late, but still nonetheless a very, historically successful program. But really exciting for me personally, seeing teams in the conference that I played in consistently getting better. This level of play consistently getting better, and obviously now we're seeing that with 3 teams being in the top 25 this week.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty obvious, and I think it's like everyone involved in college baseball knows this, but it's just patently obvious now that the Sun Belt is by far the best mid-major conference in college baseball. Right. And last year they had, again, before the Pac-12 just blew up and is no longer a thing, they were the number 5 conference by RPI. So like ahead of the Pac-12 at that point, and just behind the Big Ten, just barely behind the Big Ten. So this is a conference in baseball that really plays like a Power 5 conference, right? And really, they call it Power 4 now because the Pac-12 is not a thing. But in baseball, you can almost include the Sun Belt as like the 5th conference as a Power 5, just because, like you said, Jordan. I mean, Southern Miss, Troy, Coastal Carolina are all in the top 25, but Georgia Southern 2 years ago hosted a regional. You got South Alabama, who historically has been very good, and a few others. And it just seems like now the Sun Belt is really the best conference. If you're a Southeast mid-major school that wants to be really good in baseball, the Sun Belt is that. I mean, we saw ODU, who's another kind of newer member to the Sun Belt, play against Georgia Tech opening weekend, and the pitching staff was lights out. So I mean, and I think they're projected to finish 7th or 8th in the Sun Belt. So as a whole, I mean, the Sun Belt's doing really well on the baseball side. Let's go to the chat here. Miami showed heart yesterday, unlike South Carolina. South Alabama is always good. That's right, Canes. Manny Sanchez, doesn't matter, still early, but how is Tennessee not number 1? So let's go there. This was an interesting decision. This created a lot of controversy on social media this morning when D1 Baseball released the updated top 25. A lot of people thought Tennessee after playing in that kind of round robin tournament full of some really good teams and going undefeated again, was going to take the number one spot with A&M struggling, going 1-2 on the weekend. Everyone thought it's going to be Tennessee, then LSU, maybe UNC Arkansas. It's going to be something like that. Well, LSU was given the number one spot, and what most people were saying is that LSU hasn't played anybody, which is basically true. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. They're still, it doesn't mean they're not a good team, but Tennessee, a lot of people felt like, man, they've actually played some good teams now, and they're undefeated. Why was Tennessee not given a spot? Again, like, we're arguing over number one versus number two. But what do you think, Jordan? I mean, do you think Tennessee, who obviously played in that round robin tournament this weekend with big time wins like over Oklahoma State, for example, what do you think they should have been given the number one spot?
Yeah, for me, I'm always partial to the teams that are undefeated. Especially like you mentioned, Tennessee playing in that round robin tournament, remaining undefeated against some really good teams. LSU, while yes, they only have one loss on the season, it's to Omaha. The only team really, like you said, only team of consequence that they've played so far is Dallas Baptist in a midweek matchup. So for me, I feel like that gives Tennessee the leg up on LSU. But, at the end of the day, we're arguing over number one, number two. That's all going to come out in the wash when conference play starts.
Yeah, and I think what most people are saying is, like, listen, Tennessee faced Samford last weekend, swept them, like, pretty soundly. Samford's a solid mid-major program. Obviously, where you first attended and played baseball in your college career, Jordan.
Yeah.
And then in this round robin, they win 5-2 over Oklahoma State, who's number 16 at the time when they played. They beat Rice 13-3, and then they beat number 24 Arizona at the time 5-1. So the thought is, like, you play a pretty solid mid-major program, you sweep them, and then you play two top 25 teams at a time, and you sweep the weekend. And again, like you said, we're arguing over number one, number two, but LSU does have that one loss to Omaha, and they haven't really played anybody. But like you said, it'll come out in the wash, and SEC play will be starting, I think, in 2 weeks. So the gauntlet will start soon, and we'll find out really who the men among boys are. Looking at the ACC guys, North Carolina number 4, Florida State number 6, Virginia number 9. They righted the ship this week, going 4-0. Again, Virginia has played some tougher competition, especially that first weekend, and without their Friday night starter, who has gotten back into the games now, not really throwing a lot of innings, just building up for ACC play. Clemson, massive weekend, sweeps South Carolina. They go 4-0. They move up from rank 13 to 11. Texas is now at number 12. A&M drops from number 1 to 14, going 1-3 on the week. That's really, we talked about it early in the year, Jordan, that A&M, it's maybe the first time in the history of the game that a first-time head coach, Michael Early, got the job at A&M, and you're a preseason number 1 team with a first-time head coach.
Yeah.
And again, you're supposed to have the best offense in the country, really good arms. They did lose Gavin Grahovac, who was kind of that protection for Jace LaVallette, who's considered a potential 1-1 pick this year in the draft. So you lose that guy who hit 24 home runs last year, hitting behind Jace LaVallette, that will allow teams to actually have to pitch to LaVallette. And since then, they have not played well. Offense is not putting up a lot of runs. We can go over the scores in a little bit from this weekend, but just offensively, until game 3, offensively it was anemic. They were not putting up runs. Also, pitching lost game 2 late. Bad defense. Pitching giving up a lot of base hits. So Texas A&M is reeling right now. Wake Forest goes 3-2, but they still improved from 15 to 12. Vandy goes 2-2. They go from 14 to 18. Troy 5-0. They go from 21 to 19. Southern Miss goes 2-2, but against good competition, they go from 22 to 20. Dallas Baptist still sitting there in the top 25. Auburn first enters the top 25 after a terrible, just disastrous year last year. back in the top 25 with Butch Thompson and the team. Alabama still undefeated at 23. Coastal Carolina 4-0 gets in at 24, and then Oklahoma State gets in at 4-1. Their only loss was to Tennessee. Now in the top 25 teams that fell out of the top 25 guys. And let's go to the chat real quick because a lot of you guys are saying some stuff. Doesn't matter, still early, but how is Tennessee not number one? Yeah, read that. Agreed. I see Tennessee stronger than LSU at this point after watching quite a few games. Tennessee has dudes. Tennessee has been tested so far. LSU not so much. Yeah, I mean 100%. Tennessee should be number one. Coog says, Dusty, Tennessee number one? Get out of here. I just don't like Tennessee. Okay, well Dusty, that's fine, but that's not kind of objective analysis. Aggies didn't look good this weekend. Yeah, they did not. They did not look good. Kyle and Jordan, do you have real concerns about A&M, or do you expect them to recover and will be back in the mix come June? That's a good question, Dusty. I mean, like we've all been there in our careers. We've all seen teams that were supposed to be really good early. Again, this may be one of the worst starts for a preseason number one. To start a year. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I think there are concerns, right? The offense was supposed to be like one of the best in the country, and I think we went over it, but we can pull it up again. And while I'm doing that, I'll just keep talking. But this was supposed to be one of the best offenses in the country, and so you would expect them to be putting up 10 runs a game, pretty much minimum. That's if you have a really top tier offense in this era. 10 runs a game is kind of what you're looking for to feel like you're going to win a lot of games. And if I look at their numbers right now, they have scored 63 runs in 10 games. So they're scoring 6.3 runs a game. That's not going to cut it. Right? And so I do have concerns about A&M. And it has nothing to do with the coaching staff. I mean, I do think it is like, when you hire a guy who was the hitting coach and is a first-time head coach, I do think, and Jordan, I'll get your opinion on this, but it is kind of understated, I think. In baseball is assumed to be like the coach really doesn't have that much impact on the game. But in college baseball, like your head coach and the systems he puts in place and the confidence he exudes in the team and kind of the motivational ability he has for his team can really impact a team that has basically did not lose a lot of guys. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a cause for concern to address Dusty's comment. You look at, and let's not overlook the fact that how their 1-3 week started last week with a loss to a Sun Belt team and a good Texas State program.
Yeah, another great Sun Belt team.
You look at how they performed the weekend prior against Cal Poly, who's they're 5-6 right now. They put up 12 runs over the weekend.
Yeah.
If you're Texas A&M, you can't afford to be winning games that close. You've got to be, especially when you're playing the mid majors. I mean, we're talking getting ramped up to SEC play. There's going to be those close ball games in SEC play, but when you're playing the mid majors, those are the ones that are supposed to be your sure bet wins, and you can't be scoring 12 runs on the weekend and expect to continue to be, sitting in the top 10.
Yeah, and I think listen. Even with the loss of Gavin Grahovac, who really wasn't, he had a couple home runs through 6 games, was hitting like 227. So he wasn't providing a whole lot of offensive value so far in the year, albeit very early. But here's the kicker, guys. A&M's offense, we talk about it, scored 63 runs in 10 games. They are hitting 247 as a team. 247 as a team. This is supposed to be one of the best offenses in the country. Jace Lavalette, he's OPSing over 1,000, but he's hitting 281. He's got 14 strikeouts in 32 at-bats. As a team, they're striking out right at just a little bit under 25% strikeout rate. So that's alarming. Their walk rate is right at about 12 to 14%. So they're striking out quite a bit more than they are walking. And then on top of that, as a team, they have in 10 games 29 extra base hits. So they're getting less than 3 extra base hits per game. They only have 8 stolen bases on the year. So if you're not driving the baseball, you're hitting 247 as a team, you're not creating run scoring opportunities on the base paths, and you're striking out at a pretty high rate for a team of this caliber that hasn't entered SEC play yet, those are all concerning signs. Like, so again, they could figure it out this weekend and all of a sudden they're back to what they're supposed to be. But there are a lot of red flags right now with this team. And, the guy leading them in hitting is freshman Terrence Keel, who's doing a great job. He's got 10 hits and 25 at bats, 4 walks. He also made a huge blunder on the base paths on Saturday night. Ground ball, throw goes wide with 2 outs, 1-run game. He gets to second easily, tries to stretch it to third, gets thrown out at third. So, again, they had a chance to kind of either take the lead or it was tie the game with 2 outs, and he gets thrown out, taking an extra. And again, like errors on the base paths kill you as well. And just so I think with A&M, you're a little bit worried if you're an A&M fan, because it's just like this isn't what you expected it to be. Zach, afternoon. It was good talking with you and Dusty on the space. Yeah, man, we both enjoyed it. It got a little feisty there on Saturday night, but that was fun. Buck, let's be fair. Lavalette is a mess right now. Watching his ABs in the Saturday game, he's way off timing-wise. Without him in the middle, that offense, that's an O, not a 0, is not going to work. Yeah, Buck, that's again, like we talked about this with Georgia Tech, right? When you have a guy like Drew Burris, who's like potential 1-1 guy next year, Jace Lavalette is that guy this year. And again, he hit like 307 last year, albeit with like 29 home runs. So not quite the hit tool that Drew Burris has. But if you don't have a guy that is a serious bat behind him, that basically makes the pitching coach think, you know what, like if we walk Lavalette, like it's not much better pitching this guy like in Gavin Grahovac. All of a sudden, Jace Lavalette, who doesn't have, again, he's going to swing and miss. You're just not going to pitch to him if you don't feel like the guy behind him is a close to similar threat. And we talked about that with Georgia Tech because that's important for their offense, right? That they have a guy who right now seems to be Alex Hernandez, a freshman who's got 5 home runs on the year. You have to have a guy behind your best hitter in your lineup that provides that protection of like, well, we can't just pitch around him and, put another guy on base for this guy behind him. And right now, for me, that loss of Gavin Grahovac may have and already is, I think, having a massive impact on Jace Lavalette in the season he's going to potentially have. I think you're exactly right, Buck. His at-bats Saturday night did not look good, swinging through a lot of good pitches to hit, and just looks he just looks kind of stiff up there at the plate as well. And so we're gonna have to keep watching and see it. But again, if they're scoring 6.3 runs a game and they haven't even gotten the SEC play, like Tennessee's scoring like 15 runs a game right now, and they've played 2 top 25 teams. So if you're scoring 6.3 runs before SEC play, that number generally is going to go down. So that's something we got to watch. Zach, my Canes showed some heart and gave me hope for the season. When we got down 4-0, I really thought we were getting swept. I also don't think Florida has the same caliber of pitching as years past. That may be true, but Zach, I do think, listen, they have some dudes on the mound for Florida. Were they a little bit kind of spraying it command-wise? Yes. But like I said in the space, when a guy that throws like mid-90s in college sprays it, he's going to get a lot of chase. He's going to get a lot of chase, a lot of whiff, because college hitters just aren't as good discipline-wise. In pro ball, you're not going to get away with that, especially AA, AAA, big leagues. But in college baseball, like as long as it's near the zone, you're going to get a lot of chases. So they still do have really good pitching. Coog, typically you will see it on top of Twitter feed. I didn't see it though, nor any notifications that usually pop up. I don't know what you're talking about, Coog. Explain that.
I think one thing to mention about the Florida pitching staff is, I don't think they're as good as years past, but they are a younger staff. You see a lot of younger guys getting meaningful innings right now. Yeah. So, as we move into the middle of the season, into the latter half of the season, those are guys who that experience and those reps, they do refine you into a better pitcher. Not all the time, but with the caliber of player that Florida's bringing in year over year, I think those guys, as they continue to get more meaningful innings under their belt, are only going to be turning into better pitchers. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And Buck, last thing here, Canes Sunday pitcher Walker was impressive. Struggled early, and the announcers mentioned he gets emotional, but pulled it together to have a strong outing. He reminds me of a smaller Zach Wheeler. Coog, sorry, I was talking about the Twitter space. Yeah, it was a space hosted by
a guy like one of Miami's fans that Canes and Zach know pretty well. So just follow Canes, and then when you see Canes is speaking in a chat in a space, you'll know it's just right after the Miami games. No, Buck, I totally agree. And again, I think like Griffin Hughes on Saturday, like I said, I predicted Miami to win Saturday. One of our former clients, Griffin Hughes, really, I mean, just pitched amazing. You know, again, Miami's down 2-0, I think, in the eighth on Saturday. So again, if one of the things for Miami to take from the weekend is your pitching staff really did a hell of a job and kept down one of the best teams in the country. Florida, I think most definitely is going to find its way into the top 5 here soon. But so again, I think it was a strong weekend for Miami, just with the way they played all around and seeing their offense come to life and battle back on Sunday. That's just exactly what you wanted. Thoughts on Canes pitching compared to the rest of the country? I think they have some serious pitching on the weekend. Does that mean pure stuff wise? They have like the best dudes. I think Hughes is going to be electric for the whole year on Saturday. But what you're looking for is just effectiveness, right? It's not like stuff is one thing, but are guys effective with the stuff they have? And I think what you've seen so far out of Miami is that their guys are effective. They get weak contact. They don't walk a lot of guys. They're throwing strikes. So I think Miami. I do think Miami is going to be a regional team this year. Again, I mean, I could be wrong, but just from what I've seen early, I think they're going to find their way into a regional. Are they going to be a host? I don't think so. But I think in year 2 of J.D. Arteaga's career as head coach, if he gets this team to a regional, that's a very good sign because they had 83% turnover rate in their roster this summer. And when you have to bring in that many guys, you're not going to be bringing in nothing but studs. You're going to be bringing in guys that you got to develop. And I think they've shown they've done a great job. So, all right, let's turn to Duke. Duke 7-5 on the year. They're a preseason top 10 team. They go 3-2 on the week. They did win all 3 games this weekend. And as I pull that up, we'll kind of look at the weekend scores and kind of what they did. This is a team in the ACC that had to kind of right the ship. They had to get going. Again, they were they're 7-5, but they were 4-5 before the weekend started. So it was vitally important. Or sorry, 7-5. So they were 4-5 before the weekend started. They played Northwestern this weekend. Okay, not a major test. Let me pull this up for us. Not a major test, but this was like again. I told you guys on Friday, or maybe it was Thursday. Like this, if you're Duke and you are who the people thought you were preseason, this has to be a sweep. Like you got to get the team moving in the right direction and get some momentum. So they win Friday 14-5. They beat Northwestern 6-5 on Saturday, and then they win 11-2 on Sunday. So it looks like they've righted the ship as they go into ACC play this weekend against Cal. NC State swept Canisius again, but again, that should be a sweep. So maybe those teams doing what they need to do to kind of get back on the right track. Let's see what Zach says. Clemson looks for real. Definitely the biggest winner of the weekend. Agree. Clemson looked good. Yeah, I mean, Jordan, I don't know if you caught any of the Clemson South Carolina series, but really, I mean, they just controlled every single game. And right. I think there's 2 ways to show dominance. Is you either just you beat the doors off them and you beat them 12-0, or you win like 6-1, but there is never a sense in the game that they're going to lose this. And I think that's what Clemson showed the entire weekend is they were just in totally control the entire weekend. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was kind of a shock to Paul Maneri's system, having his first in-state rivalry with Clemson and then getting swept. It looked like a pretty hostile environment over at Clemson. I'm not sure if you saw some of the video from the stands and where the
poor guys in the bullpen getting worn out.
I'm not sure if that's a new location for the bullpen, but I mean those guys were getting absolutely crushed by the student section at Clemson. But it was a real big test for South Carolina, and Clemson obviously came back on top on a big scale.
Yeah, and I again, it's like this is the thing in college baseball is that South Carolina gets swept, but when you're playing on the road against a team who's more highly ranked. Again, it was very similar to the Miami Florida series. Like Clemson, much higher ranked.
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina was undefeated coming into the weekend. Clemson was 7-1, but had basically played probably the toughest schedule of almost anyone in the ACC. So that really battle tested 7-1. And if you're South Carolina, again, guys, like that home field advantage that Clemson had. Dusty said they had to move the bullpen after Isaacs accidentally launched one into the stands a few years back. Yeah, freshman year, let one eat into the left center stands. So, like, are you happy that you got swept? No, you didn't want that. But again, you're playing on a team that's going to be favored, so you're projected to lose 2 out of 3, and you're on the road at Clemson, who is one of the most hostile environments fan base wise you can possibly play in. I mean, I remember my freshman year, them chanting my girlfriend's name at the time, the whole left center stands. They just started chanting her name and saying other stuff that's probably inappropriate for the stream. But you get the point. Like these pitchers warming up for South Carolina are just getting rattled. These guys are pulling up social media and saying stuff to them. Like, Jordan, you've played in like an environment like that. Like, how tough is that to make it, to just stay focused and not kind of lose your concentration?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it truly takes a lot of mental toughness. I remember my junior year, which was my first year at Georgia Southern. We're opening up the season at the University of Georgia. And for those of you who don't know, at Foley Field up in right field, there's a frat house. Yeah. So, I mean, you can imagine what that scenario looks like. I was playing right field. There's a big fence along just past the field. And we get there, and there's a sheet sign that says, "Ren, when you gonna grow some?" And I showed up to the field for Thursday night for the practice before the Friday night opener, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be a long weekend. And we get there for Friday night, and I mean, we take the field after the bottom of the first. We're facing a future first-round draft pick in Robert Tyler, and they are just on me from pitch one. And so, it really, to your point, the fans can really have a big effect on guys, especially who aren't used to that hostile of an environment. Dude, I remember, that same series, a routine fly ball to right field. I overrun it. I try and correct and dive and make the catch. I miss it. End up giving up a run that ended up, costing us the game, unfortunately. But that's the kind of effect that a really harsh environment and a really harsh student section can have on the opposing team.
Yeah, and comparing even Georgia, obviously they're getting a lot of stadium renovations and everything like that. But Clemson, I remember Clemson was one of, if not the most hostile environments I played in. Georgia is definitely up there, especially in-state rivalry, like at Georgia Southern or Georgia Tech, especially Georgia Tech. I mean, everyone's going crazy in those type environments. And again, just the crowd noise. Most of these kids, remember, there's a lot of transfers up from mid-majors and all this stuff. So most of these guys are not used to a lot of this crowd noise, screaming when you're at bat, talking trash to you when you strike out. At Florida State, when you get 2 strikes on you, they say, K time. So all you're hearing is strikeout. And then you walk out and they say 1, 2, left, right. And you get to the dugout, they sit down. It's an intimidating environment. And a lot of guys, that's going to negatively impact you.
Yeah, so, and to kind of give you even more color to the in-state rivalry that is Clemson and South Carolina, my junior summer of college baseball, I went off and played in Columbia, South Carolina for the Columbia Blowfish in the Coastal Plains League. We had USC guys, we had Clemson guys, and obviously a mix of a lot of different college baseball players from the Southeast. But specifically, when we would play, a lot of times Monty Lee was the head coach at Clemson at the time. He wouldn't even send his guys to play for Columbia because it was deep in black and garnet territory. Yeah. And I mean, even if they played for the home team, our fans would still just, dog
boom. Them. Yeah. Boom. Yeah. And so it's it can't be overstated. It can't be stated enough that rivalry games on the road is a massive disadvantage for the road team. It's just how it is, right? It's most of these guys, like you said, Jordan, Florida had a lot of freshman arms, them playing in a home environment really helped them and a lot of younger arms, because if they had been playing at Miami and it's a packed house, it's totally different. And maybe Miami at home wins 2 out of 3, especially that Saturday game that was really close. So it's just like that home field advantage is a lot of times is the difference in you going 2-3 or 2-1 on the weekend versus like 1-2.
No doubt.
So let's look into this weekend coming up. And this is the top 25 right here, guys. So Georgia, Columbia, it's not going to be very fun to watch. Troy, USC Upstate. Upstate always mashes. Jordan, one of your former teammates, is an assistant coach at USC Upstate.
Yep.
So, this is going to be a good one to watch. North Carolina opens up ACC play against Stanford. Stanford, I believe, is still undefeated. I'll have to double check that, but they were undefeated going into the weekend. So it could be a potential clash of two undefeated teams. Virginia at Boston College. Virginia is going to be a heavy favorite there. Duke, who is no longer in the top 25, I don't know why it's still there, is facing California at home. Arkansas, Portland, that'll be not interesting to watch. Clemson does not open against ACC play this weekend. They'll have Davidson. Vandy, Xavier. Wake Forest, Notre Dame. Wake's going to be the favorite there, obviously at home. Florida State does not open ACC play yet this coming weekend as well. They'll be playing Lipscomb. Mississippi State against Queens, New York. In Starkville, have fun, Queens, New York, in Starkville, Mississippi. That'll be a culture shock. Cincinnati, Canisius. Should be an easy one for Canisius. Tennessee, St. Bonaventure. So Tennessee, one more weekend before SEC play, I believe. This should be a sweep for Tennessee with the way they're playing. Florida playing against Harvard. A&M against New Mexico State. This is going to be a very important one. Again, who knows? With the way A&M's playing, like, this could be an interesting one to watch just to see if they can bounce back from how they've performed so far. Because, again, like, A&M right now is not playing anywhere close to a number one team. So this is a big weekend for them before SEC play starts to kind of get the ship righted and back and going in the right direction. Dallas Baptist at Louisiana. This will be a great matchup of like some top-tier mid-majors. This will be a great one to watch. It's in Louisiana. So again, good luck. Good luck with the Raging Cajun fans yelling at you from the stands.
Talk about hostile territory.
Yeah, Jordan, talk a little bit about how hostile an environment Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns is.
Dude, I had no idea what to expect, my first year in the Sun Belt. When we went to Lafayette, I mean, it truly is.
It's like a different world, right?
It's a different world. It's a different world. And, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen their ballpark, but it rivals most Power 4 programs.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. They obviously a tremendously successful program. Yep. And I think one year, they had 50 some odd wins. Obviously, extremely successful program, but there's a reason for that. And there's a reason why, their fans show out day after day, game after game. I mean, it's a hostile place, man. When we went there and we took 2 of 3 my senior year at Georgia Southern, dude, that was the happiest. You would have thought we swept.
Yeah.
You go like in there,
yeah,
and you've got 7,500 fans on top of you. They know, like, kind of like you said, your freshman year at Georgia Tech playing Clemson. They know everything about you, and it feels like they pass out, bios of the roster to the fans before the game. They know everything about you. They know everything you did the weekend prior, and they're on top of you the entire game, and they do not let up. I mean, you could go 5 for 5 with 5 home runs, and they would still find a way to get under your skin.
100%.
Real hostile environment in Lafayette.
100%. It's like when you go into environments like that, and again, like South Carolina going into Clemson, Miami going into University of Florida, it's like if you can get out of there with 2 of 3, you're like, holy cow, man, that's massive. Like, that's a huge win to get out. That's why when Miami gets out of there 1 of 3 out of UF, it's like, dude, that's what was. You were probably expected to get swept. Miami was probably expected to get swept. So to get out of there 1 out of 3, team morale-wise, you're like, all right, we played them close twice, hostile environment, and then we get out Sunday with the win. That's a happy bus ride going back, even though you lost the series, right? So same thing is true at Louisiana. For any mid-major team that goes in there, or really any team, Dallas Baptist in Louisiana, that's going to be a great game. UNC Wilmington Southern Miss, that should be a good game to watch, good series to watch. TCU Fresno State should be a decent one. Let's get into the let's see. Did I miss something here? Oh, I did miss something. Okay. Santa Barbara, Cal State Northridge. Santa Barbara is probably going to take that one handedly. LSU against North Alabama. Again, LSU really has not played anybody. They are supremely talented. They have one of the best freshmen, if not the best freshman in the country, projected to be Derek Curiel, who's really done a great job leading off for LSU so far. And again, they're playing North Alabama. This is probably, this is a projected sweep for LSU. And so the question for LSU is like, we're really not going to know much about them until SEC play starts because they haven't really played that one team. We're like, okay, that team's a top 25 team or that's a Power 4 team or whatever. It's been, teams that they should beat pretty handedly. So we won't learn much about LSU this weekend. Oklahoma, Sam Houston, Ole Miss, Jacksonville State, Texas, Santa Clara, Oregon State, San Diego, and Oregon, Southern Cal, USC, and Andy Stankiewicz, new head coach. It's been there just recently. USC's playing really good, really well right now. And so this is going to be an interesting one to watch because I think Southern California is going to surprise some people this year. And obviously it's a program that 20 years ago was one of the best in the country, and it's really kind of fallen off the table in the last decade. And so Andy Stankiewicz is trying to kind of rebuild the program, and that should be a good one to watch. But let's look at the ACC now and what are going to be some series that we want to watch. We've covered a few of them, but Illinois, Chicago, Louisville. So Louisville doesn't open up an ACC play yet. Pittsburgh, East Tennessee State, not ACC. NC State, Wright State. That'll be a good series just because, again, NC State's trying to right the ship, Jordan. Preseason number 13. Mm-hmm. And, they sweep Canisius this weekend, but when you're a preseason number 13 team and now you're outside of the top 25 because you had lost 5 straight before the sweep, like Wright State is one of those mid-majors that really mashes, always have a really good offense. They're one of those mid-majors that if they're in your regional, you're like, crap. Like that's not a team we want in a regional. They're a regional buster. And so this is an important weekend for NC State to get the ship going. Again, a lot of teams were saying that with before ACC play starts for them. Jared, ESPN did a great job of mic placement. Listening to the chatter was great. Oh, yeah, with the bullpen at Clemson, yeah. Buck B, that's Queens. Oh, Queens, North Carolina. Yeah, that's my bad. Not New York. It would be a culture shock, but not as much as Mississippi boys coming deep into Queens to play my Mets, no less. That's right, Buck. Thank you for the correction. I must have misread that. But you're right. I mean, it still is probably a little bit of a culture shock. Like, it's still a little bit. Deep South Mississippi, Starkville, Mississippi, it's different than most places in the U.S. But, all right, so we talked Stanford, North Carolina, Virginia, Boston College, Duke, Cal. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech. This will be a good matchup, right? Two teams that are playing pretty well. Georgia Tech swept on the weekend. Offense is firing at all cylinders. The pitching staff has kind of shown a little bit of kind of like not pitching as well as they did early, but that's going to happen. This is going to be a great first test for both of these teams. See where Virginia Tech is, like they always do. They're hitting really well, pitching to a really good numbers. They are striking out a bunch of dudes. They're walking more guys as well, but be interesting to see how they pitch against a really good Georgia Tech offense. Clemson, Davidson, Wake, Notre Dame, Florida State, Lipscomb, and Miami, UConn. This will be a great weekend test for Miami. UConn is obviously one of, if not the best programs historically and consistently in the Northeast. And again, another program that just seems to always get to a super regional out of the Northeast. So, Jordan, for you, like NC State, who, preseason number 13 in the country, lose 5 straight, so like in the middle of the season so far, and then they sweep Canisius. This is a much better test than Canisius. So, like, do you think 2 out of 3, you feel pretty good about your team, even at home against Wright State?
Well, let's not look about over the fact that they have to play Campbell and UNCG during the midweek this week. Obviously UNCG not as good, not going to be as strong as a program as Campbell has been, but Campbell really strong program. Obviously, just
playing well too.
Playing well. Just lost 2 of 3 to my Eagles at Georgia Southern, so they're looking to bounce back. So it's going to be a real test for NC State. They got a big week ahead of 5 games. I think if they come out 4-1, I think that's a big, successful week for NC State.
Yeah, 4-1 weekend. And like you said, just like no slouch in the midweek. Like you're going to have to throw those are the toughest weeks in college baseball for your pitching staff, like those 5-game weeks where,
Yep.
like, if you got to use the bullpen in both games pretty deep, Tuesday, Wednesday, you got 1 day's rest before you're going into a weekend series. And Wright State, they always mash. So you're already like, man, we're probably going to have to use our bullpen a decent amount this weekend. And you got 2 games. That's going to be tough.
I think it's a big test for NC State's offense against UNCG and Campbell, because if they're close games and NC State has to start using some dudes in the bullpen, then they're going to be short-staffed for the weekend, and that's that's the last place you want to be heading into a weekend against, like you said, a good team that can mash.
Yes, yeah, and so now looking at, again, SEC play won't start for a couple weeks. But Auburn playing Old Dominion at home, that should be Old Dominion's solid. Like that will be an interesting series to watch, because Old Dominion, while their offense was kind of just okay against Georgia Tech, did not put up a lot of runs. Old Dominion's got 3 left-handed starters on the weekend. Friday night, you can ask Dusty Isaacs in the chat, like legit SEC ACC arm. Like a legit Friday night guy in the ACC, SEC. And then Saturday and Sunday are 2 really good arms that throw strikes, mix it up, keep hitters off balance. So that'll actually be a really good series. Georgia against Columbia. That should be, again, at least probably a sweep for Georgia. Arkansas, Portland, same thing. Kentucky, Wofford. This will be a great series to watch. Wofford's always one of the best mid majors in the country. And Kentucky is playing well, though, so that will be fun to watch.
Wofford 11-1 right now.
Yeah, Wofford's playing really well. And again, what you're going to get from Wofford, they're going to be running all over the place. The thing about Wofford, and again with Boston College, like Todd Interdonato, who was at Wofford and is now Boston College, like that just speed offense, when it is executed at a high level, most of these college kids have never played an offense that does that. And so pitchers get all out of whack because they're worried about holding runners, and they start throwing more balls right in the heart of the zone, or walking guys because half of their focus is on keeping the runners close. So that offense, it'll be interesting to see how Kentucky handles that. Missouri at Binghamton, Queens, North Carolina, Mississippi State, we already talked about it. Some of these we've already talked about. South Carolina at Morehead State. It'll be a nice weekend for a bounce back for South Carolina to try to sweep that and get back in the win column. Alabama against Presbyterian. Alabama's firing on all cylinders right now. It should be a series win for Alabama, if not a sweep. Same with LSU, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss. Even though Jacksonville State playing pretty well as well, this could be a decent series to keep an eye on. So right now, Jordan, obviously in college baseball, and I've said it like this, there are things you look for early in the year that kind of tell you the story of, is this offense good? Is this pitching staff good? Obviously, defense is pretty easy. It's like, how many errors have they made and how many games? Yeah. But one of the things we've been talking about is, with the pitching staff, how many guys are they walking per 9 innings? How many hit by pitches do they have? Are they missing bats? Do they have the ability to strike guys out and get out of jams late in the game, bases loaded, 1 out or whatever? And the thing with an offense is one, in this environment, right, you got to be hitting extra base hits. If you have a solid offense, you're definitely hitting over 300 as a team in this environment. Georgia Tech, for example, leading the country in doubles with 43. They have a lot of home runs as well. So do you think those are pretty good indicators of, once these teams get into conference play, they may not be quite as good as the numbers show right now early, but they're going to be able to win a lot of series because they're not giving up free base runners. They are driving the ball, getting guys to second base, getting them in scoring position.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that, you can always tell is a sign of a good team. The ones that are able to limit the extra bases, and the ones that are, obviously not walking a lot of batters. I feel like, we've all been in the situation in college baseball where that leadoff batter gets walked, and then all of a sudden it's a crooked number on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
So, the pitching staffs that are able to limit those walks, limit the extra base hits, obviously that's going to lead to a lot of success for your program. And then if you're on the flip side of that, and you're, obviously if your offense that is walking a lot, that's getting a lot of extra base hits, that's a great sign of things to come for you, especially leading into conference play. Yeah.
So let's look at Miami, the box, or the stat book for them after the weekend. against Florida, and just kind of what are the indicators saying about how they're going to perform in ACC play? Obviously, they're not opening up this weekend in ACC play, but we'll see kind of what are they doing well, what are maybe some things need to improve. So right here, as a team, they're hitting 287. So that's a little bit lower than you expect. Obviously, you just played a top 10, really a top 5 team in the country in University of Florida that brought that number down, and that's three of your 11, 12 games. So that's 25% of your season is against a top 5 team. So these numbers are it makes sense that they went down this weekend. But if you look at the games played, here's the number that's a little concerning for Miami: 9 home runs. Right, 9 home runs in this era. Like really good offenses are hitting around 2 home runs a game, and so at 9, you're basically hitting 0.75 home runs per game. You got 22 doubles as a total. You've got 32 extra base hits in 12 games, so you're averaging under 3 extra base hits a game. Not a lot of guys in runners, not a lot of guys in scoring position with one swing. And then you look at their walks to strikeouts: 56 walks, and let's call it 460 plate appearances. So again, you're right at like a little bit over 10% walk rate. You're striking out closer to right under 20%. So you'd like to see this number a little bit more equalized. They do have 24 hit by pitches, which does do that a little bit. They are 19 for 19 of stolen bases. So one of the things you want to see from an offense that's not driving the ball a lot is when they do hit singles, like they are able to move up a base and steal a base. They've been perfect in that regard. And so again, like I think there are some red flags for Miami's offense that they aren't hitting a lot of extra base hits, but they're stealing bases. I don't think anyone thought they're going to have an elite offense. But what do you see from these numbers, Jordan?
Yeah, I look at it from a different lens because I was always a guy who, for whatever reason, I could not get things started on opening weekend. I couldn't get things started really for the first month. So I see as long as this team is having some level of success early in the season against the teams that they're supposed to be having success against, 280, 287, let's call it 290 as a team, leading into, 12 games into the season, I think that's a good sign. You have guys who are just starting to hit their stride at the right time, I might add. I think that's a good sign. Obviously, when we're talking about, a program like Miami, when you get to conference play, you're consistently playing a lot stronger competition than you are earlier in the season. So is that going to be a big factor? Probably. But nonetheless, I think, as long as you are having that success early in the season, I think it's a good indication of things to come. But you got to take it with a grain of salt because the ACC is no joke.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's early, right? There's plenty of guys who are slow starters, and if you got 2 or 3 guys in the lineup that are start off really slow that you're going to depend on,
right?
Your numbers are going to be skewed down big time because if they're going to be big guys in your lineup, like they're going to equalize that number once they get going. So you're right. It's not like a perfect scenario as far as evaluating a lineup, but it's something we have to wait and see once ACC starts. So Buck says, watching Vandy over the past few years closely, it seems pretty clear that Corbin recruits a certain kind of player, position that is small, fast, athletic, not many big dudes there. Thoughts? I think Corbin historically, he likes to have a pretty balanced offense. So he likes to have, think of Tony Kemp, for example, or the kid last year, the center fielder who went in the first round. I can't remember his name, but high batting average, steals a lot of bases. So RJ Austin, Buck, who you said has been impressive, very similar. Probably not nearly the power threat that Christian Moore is from Tennessee last year, but he knows his role. He's going to lead off. He's going to steal bases. He's going to get on base at a high clip. That is something that Tim Corbin has historically really liked. He likes to have a table setter or two at the top of the lineup that really know their role, and then have some big guys behind them. And again, you have a couple new coaches on staff there at Vanderbilt, so it'll be interesting to see how the offense performs this year, because that was the reason for the change, is that the offense the last couple of years they hadn't been hitting the ball at the ballpark. And again, in this era, if you're not hitting the ball to the ballpark, it's tough to score a lot of runs because everybody is. So if you're below average hitting the ball out of the ballpark, like you're probably going to have a below average offense unless you're just doing something crazy on the base paths every game. So let's look at the pitching for Miami. This is a really good sign. 2.8 ERA, especially after a weekend against the University of Florida. 103 innings pitched, 69 hits given up. This is insane. In this era of college baseball, I mean, if you're hovering around 1 hit per inning, that's really good. To be at, I mean, you're giving up 70 hits per every 100 innings. That's really impressive. Even more impressive, 39 walks. So they almost have a whip as a team of 1. Their walks plus hits per innings pitched is just a tick over 1 as a team. So guys, like, Miami's pitching staff is legit. And so again, when your pitching staff is elite, your offense doesn't have to be elite. Your offense just has to be decent. And right now, I think, like Jordan said, like Miami's offense has been good enough if it can continue what it's done so far. And I like their whip right now is 105. Like that's elite of elite right now. You know, I mean, Tennessee's is probably better than that. There's a few teams that may be better, but for Miami having just left the weekend against University of Florida and for these numbers to be there, really good. 140 strikeouts in 103 innings. So not only are they not giving up hits, they're not walking guys, they're striking out a bunch of dudes as well. So elite numbers from the pitching staff, 185 opponent batting average. They've only given up 19 extra base hits in 12 games. So they may be averaging a little less than 3 extra base hits as an offense, but they're only giving up less than 2 extra base hits per game as a pitching staff. So, like, again, if you're Miami, this is just elite, right, Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think for me, on the 2 Georgia Southern teams that I was on, we were a good hitting team and a great pitching team. I think in today's day and age in college baseball specifically, where, you know, bats are hot, balls are juiced, if you have a pitching staff that's able to keep the opposing batting average to a 185, a 2.8 ERA, you're doing a lot of things right. And like I said, you know, those bats will come around in the lineup eventually. You know, obviously with the ACC and the competition level of competition they play at, you know, it might stay, you know, pretty much where it's at 290, which is still a very respectable team batting average. Yeah. But if you're able to keep your opponents to limit your opponents at the level at which Miami's pitching staff is currently, you're going to win a lot of ball games throughout the season.
Yeah, and it, like, again, I think if you looked at these numbers and you said, okay, these numbers will be the, you know, ratio-wise, whatever, will be the exact same at the end of the season, Miami's a regional team. Like, no doubt. Like, they are a regional team, no doubt, if these numbers stay even close to what they are right now. The other important thing is, listen, they've given up 35 runs to 32 earned runs. So they're playing really good defense. They're not giving up a lot of free runs, right? Like, every run that teams have scored has basically been something they've really had to earn. They're not giving away a lot of free runs. So you could say, oh, they got a 2.80 ERA, but they've given up 50 runs, but only 32 have been earned. Like, that's a red flag because you're not playing great defense. But you've given up 35 runs to 32 earned runs. Like, all in all, just elite numbers from Miami's pitching, which, again, like, if offensive numbers hold and the pitching numbers stay even close to what these are, Miami's a regional team for sure. Like, no doubt.
Yeah.
Now let's go to what people think is the number 1 team in baseball, even though they're number 2, and just compare numbers. And like, again, we looked at these numbers before the weekend, and just be ready to jump out of your seat, Jordan, with what these numbers are. They're pretty insane, but we'll see. They've probably gone down a little bit having faced 2 top 25 teams, but let's take a look at offense, pitching, and defense for Tennessee. Obviously 11-0. As a team, they're hitting 339. They have 16 doubles, 3 triples, 31 home runs. 11 games in, they are hitting basically 3 home runs a game as a team. Even more impressive, 92 walks in 11 games.
Jeez. They're
averaging over 8 walks a game as a team. 12 hit by pitch. So add. So they're basically averaging 9 free passes a game. Only 76 strikeouts. Like, they're hitting bombs, they're getting on base, and they're not striking out. This is in, I mean, let's look at it. I mean, this is in like 460 plate appearances to only have 76 strikeouts. They're basically striking out like at a 12% rate as a team, 13% rate. I mean, that's unbelievable for a team that's hitting for this much power. I mean, they have, again, 50 extra base hits in 11 games. So they're averaging like almost 5 extra base hits a game, 10 stolen bases. I mean, this with the way their offense is rolling, you're not going to be stealing a lot of bases because like everyone's hitting doubles and triples and home runs. But, this is what an elite offense looks like, isn't it, Jordan?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the offense that we've come to know and love from Tony Vitello's program in Tennessee. But I think the one thing that you pointed out that is most impressive to me is the collective team plate discipline. To have more walks than strikeouts. Again, we're 11 games into the season, but to have, what is that? That's 16 more walks than strikeouts as a team at this point in the season. That tells me that everybody's buying into a common goal. Everybody's up there, and they're trying to get the bat into the hands of the next guy. They're trying to get that guy from second. They're trying to get him in. They're not chasing pitches out of the zone. They're sticking to their approach. So I think that's, again, really impressive numbers. But when you see the level of offensive production that Tennessee is putting up right now, usually that kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of strikeouts. And the fact that they're doing both at an elite level is, it can't be overstated enough.
Yeah, I mean, just look at some of these numbers. I mean, Gavin Klein has 12 extra base hits, 7 home runs out of 18 hits, and he's got 13 walks to 2 strikeouts. I mean, it's insane, these offensive numbers, especially after the weekend where you played in a big league ballpark against 2 top 25 teams. Mm-hmm. And I think that was something they were saying a bunch on social media. It's like, oh, these guys playing a small ballpark, huh? And they were just hitting bombs all over Minute Maid Park. If that's what they still call it, Houston Astros field. But let's look at the pitching numbers. 1.82 ERA, 89 innings pitched, 52 hits given up, 29 walks to 144 strikeouts. Tennessee is fairly close to striking out 2 guys an inning. And they're walking 1 every 4 innings, 1 every 3 innings. So, yeah, let's just call it 1 every 3 innings. So, again, I mean, this is an offense that is lights out. And then the pitching staff is so good. Like, how does this team lose a game, Jordan?
I don't think, don't knock on wood, but I don't think they are on track to lose one yet. Yeah. Like I said earlier, you can be an average offensive team and still win baseball games with this level of pitching. But when you've got elite hitting and elite pitching, I mean, I don't see a game coming up in their schedule where I don't think they're the favorite.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just, again, like, this is when you're looking at, okay, what do elite teams look like preseason? That's what it looks like. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks for joining, Jordan. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Let's look at this last question here from Bill Wallace. I would agree, not as many big dudes, but I think they might have the most physically conditioned players in college baseball. Yeah, it just seems like, I think, again, Josh Elander has, Tony Vitello, Josh Elander, Frank Anderson have come in there and turned Tennessee, which was for a decade bottom of the barrel in the SEC, to the best program in college baseball certainly over the last 4 years. And they did it in a matter of a couple years, right? They went from bottom of the barrel to the best program in college baseball, getting the best players. Again, and it's no surprise, like Jordan would know this, like when we go out watching our clients at tournaments in Hoover, in Atlanta, like East Cobb, Lake Point, all over, like, not just Josh Elander out there, not just Luke Bonfield, not just Frank Anderson, but Tony Vitello is everywhere. Right, Jordan?
Yeah, it's a good point because, obviously a lot of times we go out there, there's one, maybe two coaches at a certain program that are out watching some of the best talent in the country. But year over year, especially when we're talking about the, what's the PBR event in the middle of the summer that I can't think of?
Futures games.
Futures game. You see 4 to 5 Tennessee staff members and including Tony Vitello when they're out there. So obviously this is and kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the hitters. This is not just a team that's bought in, but it's a coaching staff that's bought in. I think not only are they finding extreme talent, but they're finding extreme attitude in the right baseball players who are then able to kind of buy into that same mentality that the coaching staff has.
Yeah, I think like in closing, it's not just that they are getting the best players with like just a bunch of talent, but they also kind of buy in and play with their heads on fire.
Yeah,
right? Like Tony Vitello's players love him, and he knows he will go to bat for them with umpires, with anything, and so they play like they play like every game is final game of a College World Series. And so not only are they super talented, but they literally have they all play with that dog in them, as they say. So Jordan, thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll do this again more often as we now that we're in season and stuff. But thanks for joining.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, see you, Jordan. Now, guys, thanks for chatting with us and everything like that. Obviously, tomorrow we'll go over. I should be able to do a stream. I think there, may have some kind of schedule thing with one of my sons that I may not be able to. But if I am, we'll go over the midweek stuff and everything like that. But thanks for joining on the stream. Thanks for asking all the questions and chatting with us. And we'll be back tomorrow with another.